Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. It is the Sunday before Christmas, and we're here for you. We've got a couple hours to spend together, look at life through a biblical lens, and generally try to solve all the world's problems in, 2 hours or less. I hope you're comfortable, warm. It's raining here in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a kind of a damp, dank rain. We're here every Sunday night from 8 until 10 p.m. On the Bible Forum, talking to you about life and about God and about all things important. Bible Forum is a ministry of alternatives, biblical counseling and education, a 501c3 nonprofit corporation sustained entirely by your free will offerings. We're getting ready come January 1st to celebrate 20 years of continuous broadcast, and all because of you and your prayers and your help. If you'd like to help, go to the website, thebibleforum.net. Look for the donate button. You'll find it there, and it'll tell you what to do. If you'd like to send a check, just shoot me an email, thebibleforum@gmail.com, and I'll give you an address. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, whether it's standard or daylight savings. And we are spending 2 hours talking about life and how God and biblical principle factor into all of it. If you'd like to get an email once a week, one day a week, Saturday, sign up, click the button, and we'll put you on the list, and we'll send you the email, let you know what's going on this week. Talking about this week, the government of the Canadian province of Quebec is considering allowing doctors to euthanize people suffering from Alzheimer's, dementia, and other diseases where the patient is unable to provide their consent. The doctors and the lawyers know better than the family. According to LifeSite News, a Canadian health minister, her name is Danielle McCann, said at a press conference earlier this month, the recommendation to allow the practice of euthanizing patients without their consent came from an expert panel that spent 18 months studying the issue. This expert panel consisted of amoral experts with no skin in the game. The advance assisted death directed would have to be authorized by the patient while they are still mentally able to decide. However, family members who disagree with their loved one's decisions would not have a veto. Opponents of the measure also say that if someone were to change their mind, they could have no way of stopping their own death. This is what is called the proverbial slippery slope, and it happens in nations that are not founded on biblical principle. It happens in the one nation of the world that is founded on biblical principle when the individuals within the system have abandoned God and all things godly. They have no eternal, absolute standard of right and wrong. It all works based on how I feel. 20 years from now, we'll find out that this was not the best thing in the world, and we'll make a change. We won't bring all those people back. That's not going to happen, and the families are not going to find any satisfaction in this whatsoever. A new Netflix comedy is out that depicts Jesus as being gay. I don't think this is the first time, but it has generated a petition that has amassed more than 1.8 million signatures on something called change.org, and that's so far. The production is called The First Temptation of Christ. It's not a new title. It may be a rehash of the old First Temptation of Christ, or it may be the same one, just making another round. That thing is probably 20 or 30 years old. But this one's produced by a Brazilian comedy group on YouTube and is available on Netflix's US platform with subtitles. It's a 45-minute episode, and it's rated TV MA, mature audiences only. which means it's vulgar and it's ungodly in every sense of the word. The comedy depicts Jesus as a 30-year-old cursing gay man returning home to visit Mary and Joseph, who are throwing him a birthday party. This Jesus brings a man named Orlando to the party, and it's presumed that the two are a couple. Further, the show depicts Jesus as not wanting to be God's son. In the show, both of Jesus' fathers, I couldn't get that straight. Both of Jesus's fathers are at the party, Joseph, and a character depicting God the Father. The character depicting Jesus says in the episode, "I think I'd rather be Joseph's son." At one point, the Godfather, the God who is the Father, character propositions Mary for sex. There's more, but that's enough. I'm tired of it. Change.org petition has collected 1.8 million signatures so far. It says it wants to remove the film from the Netflix catalog and for the comedy group Portia dos Fundos to be held responsible for the crime of villainous faith. After agreeing to pull the program, Hallmark changed its decision, saying the Crown media team has been agonizing over this decision as we've seen the hurt it has unintentionally caused. From this, Mike Perry, President and CEO of Hallmark Cards, said simply they believe this was the wrong decision. What it means is they got a lot of letters, got a lot of backlash. They got people saying they weren't going to support them anymore. They backed off. He said, quote, "Our mission is rooted in helping all people connect, celebrate traditions, and be inspired to capture meaningful moments in their lives. Anything that detracts from this purpose is not who we are. We are truly sorry for the hurt and disappointment this has caused." The statement also promised to put LGBT characters in programs and movies. Hallmark, it says, will be working with GLAAD to better represent the LGBT community across our portfolio of brands. The Hallmark Channel, it says, will be reaching out to Zola to reestablish our partnership and reinstate the commercials. How about that? There's some more stuff going on. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the program. Should have made it to the early part of this thing, but it didn't. We'll make that work later on. I'm toying with whether to talk to you about this Family News in America thing at this juncture or whether to wait and put it somewhere else. But I think we'll continue with it. It really was interesting. A recent study from Pew Research Center revealed that the United States has the highest rate of children living in single-parent households in the world. The study, which analyzed 130 countries around the world, based on the criterion of the number of children living with one parent and no other adults, found that the U.S. rate was 23%. That's worldwide, and more than 3 times the share of children around the world who do so. The study, which analyzed how people's living arrangements differed by religion, also found that U.S. children from Christian and religiously unaffiliated families are about equally likely to live in this type of arrangement. Did you hear that? Apparently, American Christians who have no more commitment to children, let alone God, than do anyone else in the world, are doing the same kinds of things. I got a question. Are they then truly Christian? Or are they just simply churchgoers being deceived by their leaders? In comparison, 3% of children in China, 4% of children in Nigeria, 5% of children in India live in single-parent households. They do better than the Christian nation does. These are people we consider pagan for the most part. In neighboring Canada, the share is 15%. Runners-up are also Western nations with higher than average rates. Nations like Denmark at 17%, France at 16%, Ireland at 14%. The only nation with a higher average than us is the UK. It has 21%. Now do you understand why our young people are so dangerously socially ignorant and religiously pagan? Pew said the results are due in part to a decline in marriage rates and a rise in births outside of marriage in the U.S. See? Follow God's program, and this doesn't happen. Now, critics are going to disagree. They'll point to children who turned out bad, all the while living in decent families and attending church and so forth. However, the human heart is naturally desperately wicked, deceitful in all things, beyond anything anyone can imagine. Jeremiah 17:9. But children need training in righteousness. That's why they have parents. That's why God set it up this way. Of course, that training does not guarantee a godly result, but it does build into the child the knowledge of right and wrong, the way God defines the terms. And when they are old, they will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6. They may live ungodly lives, but they'll know the difference. Now, are their children raised in godly homes who reject their training? Absolutely. A parent can only train a child in terms of behavior. The heart is God's domain. And every human being has a responsibility to repent of their natural sinful attitudes and ways and then yield their heart to God in Christ. That's a personal spiritual transaction. All the praying of the so-called sinner's prayer is not going to do anybody any good unless or until that person, that child, that adult wants to. A similar study Pew conducted last year found that 1/3 of all U.S. children are living with an unmarried parent, a figure that has nearly tripled since 1968, rising from 13% to 32%. The data included unmarried cohabiting parents, which accounted for the 32% figure. The Washington Free Beacon suggested the study's results are in direct correlation to the Western world's move away from traditional family structures. They cited the steady decline of two-parent homes in the United States. I would offer a correction. This is the direct result of the Western world's move away from God. America's top spot has been a long time coming, the Free Beacon reported. Data from the U.S. Census Bureau showed in 1960 just 9% of U.S. children lived with one parent. In 60 years, that number nearly tripled. What's that mean? It means though many still debate the notion, several studies have shown that family structure is an important factor in a child's future success, if not the most important factor. The single strongest predictor of a child's economic fortunes is the fraction of single parents in the area where they grow up. In the study, researchers concluded that the fraction of children living in single-parent households is the strongest correlate in upward income mobility. Family structure does not just predict economic success. Research by Sarah McClanahan in Princeton University and Bruce Ellis at the University of Arizona also found that boys raised by single mothers are significantly more likely to end up in jail. And girls raised without a father are more likely to end up pregnant in their teen years. But the nuclear family is not all that important, right? Who says so? Only those who have rejected God in their lives. Oh, and these are the same people showing up in the negative percentages.